No, I'm a parent.
Where at?
Berkeley.
What's your name?
Joel Chala.
So why are you here today?
I'm here because it is time that we cannot keep affording losing our teachers because they cannot afford living where they teach. And we also have to be able to fund the school better so that all the kids get a fair share to this amazing education we can provide.
And there are a lot of billionaires in California.
We're about to become that. Yeah, I mean, it's insane how much money there is in the state, and we still cannot figure it out how to allocate it in the right places. So
the legislature is supermajority Democrat. They could pass a tax to...
we think they can figure something out, right? All those beautiful minds put into good work that should get us to where we need to go.
And what do you think about the charter schools?
I have my mixed feeling about it. I think that there is a lot of misconception that just because it is a charter school and it's focusing on something that it is successful, I think that it takes money away from public education. I'm not convinced that it's a solution. I think the solution is to throw more money at our public schools, which are actually working really well. They just need better funding.
Our schools! What kind of schools? Public schools! Our schools! What kind of schools? Public schools! Our schools! What kind of schools? Public schools! Which side are you on? 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 Messaging is so intense. Our schools! What kind of schools? Public schools! Our schools! What kind of schools? Public schools! Our schools! What kind of schools?
Mitzi Perez. I work and live in Richmond, California.
And you're here today in front of the California Charter School Association. What's going on and why are you here today?
So we're here in front of CCSA to defend public education. We need our monies to go to our public schools. We need our students to have the resources that they need. If I had to guess, I'd say that these people are probably paid to be out here, and they don't know what they're fighting for. So.
And how have charter schools affected West Contra Costa School District?
Right now, they were looking to close some schools. And when we fought back against that, our superintendent kind of rescinded what he said. So he had this moment where he was like, no, we're actually not closing any of our schools. We're just looking at spaces where we can fit our schools and kind of like see where all of our students can be. But that's the real fight that we're in right now. Our schools don't have enough students, and we need our schools to be at a better level, but with the students that are from that community.
And there's a lot of money going into building new schools, the Aspire School, millions and millions of dollars. Do you have a concern about where the money's coming from and how that's going to affect public schools?
Definitely. I mean, I think that definitely should go to like schools that haven't been built for like several years, like Kennedy, like Richmond High.
They've been underfunded.
Underfunded, exactly.
So they're building new charter schools and underfunding the public schools that exist in Richmond.
Yep, definitely. That's what they're doing.
I think it's creating a two-tier system because how is it creating two tiers?
What I see now is that this choice that people speak of kind of like puts all of our youth in a really tough spot where they can't. Can I start that over? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Two-tier system for educators and the students. I mean, with co-location, some students get some things other students don't get.
Right. So right now at Kennedy High School, we have Caliber on our campus. And there are some times where we can't even use our own gym. We can't use our own public space. And I think that's a big problem because this space was meant for us, right? And it's meant for the students of Kennedy. It's meant for the families of Kennedy, and that's what it should be used for.
So you feel you're basically busting up a public school. Somebody's taking it over.
Yeah.
And that's under Prop 39?
Yep. And then they plan to go into North Campus, which isn't theirs either, but that's what the school board and Prop 39 is kind of holding together.
Okay, thank you.
Joseph Glatzer, teacher at Pinole Middle and West Contra Costa Unified.
And there's a rally here today. There's a march coming. Why are you here today, Sacramento?
So we have two main problems facing us in public education in California. First is a lack of funding from the state in general. And secondly, the fact that that limited funding we do get, one of the lowest in the nation, I think ranked 41st out of the states, is having a huge chunk taken away by charter schools. And so the idea that you're going to fix a public education system by taking money away from them and giving it to private corporations to run, in all but name, private schools is really absurd to me. And it's sort of introducing these market-based machinery into public services, which in general causes decline of services and higher prices in those other cases in public utilities and things, PG&E, what's going on with that. So the idea that we need more private marketplace in our public education, I think, is totally wrong.
And is it creating a two-tier system? Public school teachers and the benefits and conditions they have, and then charter school teachers?
Well, it's definitely a two-tiered system because even though the law says they have to take all kids that apply for the lottery, they do have many selection processes in charter schools. And one of the ways they select is just by having a parent fill out an application period, which means that parent is more able to be involved in the child's education. And so that alone is a selection process, let alone those schools that require volunteer hours and all kinds of.
Isn't that illegal?
Well, yeah, the ACLU just came out with a report that shows there's a bunch of schools in California that are doing that illegally. And so I'm wondering why we're not enforcing the law. Why is the Attorney General not enforcing the law? If we as public schools did half the things charter schools did in terms of lack of accountability, use of public funds, we would have like our people in jail. Like we would be being prosecuted. Our schools would be being shut down. And so I'm just wondering why the double standard, except it's obvious, it's the money.
And do you think that public money should only go to public schools and not charter schools?
Well, I definitely think that because charter schools are educating kids, and at this point, the best thing is to just have them become public schools just like us.
Under an elected school board.
That's right, become part of the school districts, and so they're not peeling away our funds anymore. I'm okay with the original idea of charter schools being a lab of innovation. What I'm not okay with is using that as a tool for corporate privatization, which is essentially what it's become.
And this issue of co-location, which is provided for in Proposition 39, how has it affected you personally and the school district?
So at my school in particular, Pinole Middle, we have Voices, which is a heavily segregated charter school on our campus, which does not reflect the demographics of the community or our school.
How is it segregated?
I think it's 96% Latino. And although our public schools are too segregated, I definitely agree with that, and we do need to act on that. The charter schools are much more segregated than we are. And so they're only making the problem worse. They are taking our space on our campus. They took over part of our B building. We have teachers who have to deal with constant yelling and desks being shuffled throughout the day, screeching on the floor. And so there's times of the day that our teachers just can't do their job because they're constantly interrupted by this noise.
And two schools in one location, doesn't that create kind of chaos?
And also it's age inappropriate because we have a middle school with kids between, 12 and 14-ish. And then we have a K through 2, I think, is their campus. And so that alone is inappropriate and not safe. And so the idea of this separate school under our roof is very uncomfortable. They're uninvited guests that we never asked for. And that's our space. And we have a teacher who didn't have a science lab this year because of that space being taken. And that's unfair. The public taxpayers have paid for those services. And when they approve those school bonds, and those parcel taxes, they didn't think they were going to go to private corporations to run these schools on our public campuses.
Do you think there's profiteering going on by the developers, Chamberlain and other people?
Chamberlain, Scully, and I know a lot of these people are making a lot of money off charter schools. There's real estate money being involved. And in fact, when you look at some of the charter schools, the money they get from the state is being doubled by their millionaire and billionaire buddies who are funding them.
The Charter School Association, Netflix, Reed Hastings, the Walton family, Bill Gates. I mean, yeah, they say that they don't have enough money for education, but it seems like these billionaires could pay for education.
Well, UTLA did a really great job in making this point of how many billionaires we have in California and how we have all the money we need for public ed if we just tax those billionaires and stop being so afraid of interfering in the quote-unquote free market, because the market works to support those who already have privilege. And those of us without privilege, the working class, we're stuck. We need government support. We need the state to support what they're supposed to be doing, which is public ed for all.
And what do you think about these bond issues? There's a parcel tax EE that's providing $500 million, but a lot of that is going to go to charter schools. Do you have a concern about that?
So it's a concern because it's a double-edged sword. Because yes, it's great that we're getting more funding, which we desperately need. We need more counselors, we need more teachers, smaller class sizes, more support staff, and so on. But at the same time, we're sowing the seeds of our own destruction of public education if we're giving a large chunk of that money to charter schools. And so it's truly a double-edged sword.
So you think it's a concern that you're actually voting for parcel tax, or the union is supporting parcel taxes that's going to actually fund charter schools, which they say that they're opposed to.
Yeah, that's right. And not just that, I'm against sort of the whole property tax, parcel tax model. What we need is the state to tax billionaires to fund for public education equitably. It shouldn't be based on the local community to pass these taxes, which sometimes do go against working class people who have a big mortgage and they have a tough time paying their property taxes. And so this is not the model. This is regressive. What we need to do is tax those with a lot of money to help those who don't have a lot of money. It's
billionaires tax? That sounds pretty radical.
Well, this is Bernie Sanders' message, which he said, when I saw him in San Francisco, he said, wow, I got this real radical message. Those with the most should also pay the most to help support the rest of society. They gained off our society, and so they should be helping to support the society that they've done so well off of. I don't think that's a radical concept.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Not bad. It's actually not bad. After I went to a few other schools.
What do you say?
Good, how are you?
I'm Laura Kerr. I am here to defend great schools and to stand for all students.
What does that mean?
What it means to me is public schools across California need additional funding, and we should all be working together to make sure that there's more funding for our students, in particular our vulnerable youth. And I'm opposed to the divisive and misleading bills that are in the legislature that are trying to undermine certain kinds of public schools. And
what do you think about the billionaires, Netflix, Reed Hastings, the Walton family, and others who are putting money into private charter schools? I mean, they're not paying taxes like these IPOs of these big corporations. Do you think they should be fully taxed?
charter schools are public schools, and they're 100% nonprofit in California.
Don't they have corruption crisis in a lot of charter schools? Of people stealing money from charter schools? Executives? I mean, in fact, Ref. Rodriguez in Los Angeles. You know about him?
I think that you should talk to someone.
Have you ever heard of Ref. Rodriguez?
I think you should talk to someone else.
Nicole Parmley. I'm the spokesperson for the California Charter Schools Association. There's 3 specific bills on the assembly side. Excuse me, let me start that over again. There are 3 specific bills on the assembly side, AB 1505, 1506, and 1507, as well as Senate Bill 756 on the Senate side. And we believe that all of these bills taken together will rip opportunity away from the families who need public school options. And that's why we're here today. We want people in the building to know, we want our legislators to know. Most importantly, we want the community to know that we're a community. We're families, we're part of this community, and we want students who are students of color and some of our most vulnerable students to have options.
And how many charter schools are there in California?
You know, I'd have to get back to you on the specific number. I want to say there's around 1,275 total.
And the people who are pushing the bills and organizations saying that charters are siphoning off money from public schools, do you have an argument about that or a difference about that?
Well, I mean, I think our position is very clear, and that's that money follows the student itself. And if a student is choosing a charter school and that's where the student is getting the best education for him or her, that's where the money should go.
Now, another issue is that they say that there's a lack of transparency. There have been issues like Ref. Rodriguez in Los Angeles, who had a private company that he owned that was supplying his school. Are you concerned about possible financial or transparency issues?
Well, I think that transparency and accountability has been something that charter schools have been working to fully address for nearly a decade. We saw major progress both with CCSA and the CTA and other labor groups with Governor Gavin Newsom in January with the passage of SB 126. This was something that CCSA has long supported, and we were happy to be able to see legislation like that passed in January.
And the issue has been raised about the lack of the electorate, the people, to actually control the schools because they're not under elected school boards. What's your response to that? Because public money is being going to charter schools and there's no public control of it in that sense.
That's actually completely false. Charter schools are public schools. They're open to all students.
I'm talking about the boards of the public schools.
Yeah,
Are they elected
absolutely.
by the public?
Listen, charter schools are absolutely public schools.
Are the boards elected by the public? That's the question.
Charter school boards are often run by their own boards, but I think what's important here is that charter schools have a relationship with their authorizer, and their authorizer can be overseen by the district, the county board of education.
My name's Juliana. I'm just here as a parent. I'm not a teacher. But I remember marching with signs like this when I was 17 years old, and it's actually we've moved up from 47th to 41st, and I just don't think it's good enough.
Okay. Prefer not to.
Berkeley teachers.
Okay, and what's your name?
Hi, I'm Robin Bogosian. I teach second grade at Berkeley Unified School District at Thousand Oaks.
And you're here in Sacramento. What are you here for?
We are here to make the case that we need more funding from our state government. Our school is 41st in the nation in per pupil spending, and our students are underserved.
And how does that affect your students?
That affects my students in many ways. They are not getting the kinds of services they need for special ed, for counseling, for a number of different things. We have a great PTA, but not all schools have wonderful supportive PTAs to help their kids with arts and sciences.
And your wages? When's the last time you had a wage increase?
When's the last time we had a wage increase? I think we
had like a 1% wage increase last year.
How do you live on your wage?
We don't do well.
We do not. It's very, very
We're
hard.
always squeaking by.
That's right. Yeah, saving is very hard.
The Bay Area has gotten more and more and more expensive.
That's right.
California has a lot of billionaires. In fact, they're giving a lot of money to charter schools. What do you think the legislature should do? They have a 2/3 majority. They could pass a tax thing. They don't have to have an initiative.
There are many things that they could do. I don't have all of the answers, but I'm thinking overturning Prop 13 for corporations is one way. We should be asking our corporations definitely for more, but it's also up to our constituents, our citizens, to fund what is right. We want to fund what's important and lower the prison.
I think more money is spent for prisons and education in California.
Exactly.
How do you figure that?
Well, a part of it has to do with that it's a private run often, and so
Profiteering off of prisoners?
exactly profiteering off of prisoners. And if you keep the students dumb, then you're going to get them to make mistakes and end up in prison, and usually in a not reasonable way as well. So that's it seems to be this circle that's going on in this government right now in general.
And charter schools, you march by the California Charter School Association. They say that they're giving kids a choice and that the money should follow the kids.
Unfortunately, their choice is, oh, I'm sorry, you're not doing well in our school. We're going to kick you out and put you into public school. So it would be great. We're all fighting for the same thing, but it'd be great if we actually worked together and if they joined the union so we could all be together in this fight.
What about the idea of, do you think there's a danger of a 2-tier education system, charter schools and public schools?
I absolutely do. I think that just like my colleague here, my friend Jenny said, when we start all being unified, that's when we're going to start making a difference. There's a 2-tier right now. They don't have to take students with IEPs and so that makes their scores relatively higher.
My name is Kayla, and I'm a staff person at the union, Peralta Federation of Teachers. It's the union that represents faculty, nurses, and counselors in the Peralta Community College District at Laney College, College of Alameda, Merritt College, and Berkeley City College. And we're out here to tell legislators and the senators that our schools need funding and that they don't need to be closed. And the community colleges are out here to oppose the online college, which is the 115th community college.
Well, more money is going to that, apparently.
Yeah, a lot of money is going to that, and it's taking away from the colleges that are already here, the community colleges that a lot of Californians have been a part of, a lot of Californians work in. A lot of people have benefited from the California community college system, and we don't need any more funding taken out of that.
And also you had an issue with Laney being taken over for a stadium. was that about?
Yeah, there were some inquiries for the A's to build a stadium near Laney College on Peralta land, but our faculty and our students and our community came out and fought, so the A's had to go elsewhere.
I'm Rebecca Talk from Santa Rosa Teachers Association. I'm here to support our public schools.
And what's happening in Santa Rosa that you're concerned about?
I'm concerned about keeping our public funding for our schools and working with charter schools.
What's happening with the charter schools? Are they growing in your area?
Definitely growing, and it's taking students, moving students around. So we want equity for all of our community.
How many charter schools are there in your district?
A handful at least.
So they're getting money and they're growing?
Yes. Yes, it's a concern.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
So Rebecca Marquez Sehack, and I am here representing the Rockland Teachers Professional Association, which is Rockland Unified, which is about 20 minutes outside here of Sacramento. And I'm here because I work for a district that is actually a fairly high-performing school district. I actually work at the most high-performing elementary school, and the charter that has moved into our school district is actually encroaching quite a bit onto our school district, and there's absolutely no need for a charter school in our high-performing school district. And currently what's happening is they have expanded a little bit, and because of the current law at this time, we are forced to have to pay for their expansion, and their expansion happens to be right on one of our campuses. So it is encroaching upon our kids there, and of course us having to allocate those funds to fund them. So I'm very disappointed in the fact that there are parents in our school district and also some of our surrounding areas that feel that the high quality schools that we have within the Placer County district are not good enough for their kids. But what's really odd to me is that on average, about 6 months after their kids come to our go to their charters, they come right back to our schools when they realize that they're not satisfied with what they're getting.
So they're not they're not getting what they promised.
They are not getting the promises. All too often, many of their teachers are teachers that are not very experienced. These are teachers that by and large may not have secured a job during the new school year, and so they look to a charter for employment, which I don't have any problem with that because I do want public school teachers to find work.
Do you think there should be public money going to privately run schools?
Absolutely not. If you are a charter and you're seeking to be able to tailor make your own school, that's what private education is all about. Public schools are not for profit, they're for our children. Statewide here in California, and we need to make that statement here today and ensure that the public absolutely knows that that we are here to stay.
I'm Diane Eade. I'm a retiree, but I did teach 30 years with adult education, and I still am on the bargaining committee for SCTA, and we're advocating for stronger adult education and hopefully give back some of the funding that they took when the flex funds happened 8 years ago.
What do you think about the fact that California has a $21 billion surplus?
They should give it to education in general.
Emergency
education, yes, public education all the way, because it's really important that we educate our children and give it to them for free and appropriate.
Angry teacher band. Here we go. Red, red. Red for 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 red.
name is Yari, and I work at Glenview in Oakland, California, and I am out here because my students are in school right now and they can't be here right now. So it's my second year teaching, but I've worked in the Oakland schools for several years before that. And what I've seen is constant cuts in education, and it's completely backwards. Our country is completely backwards, that we aren't doing any preventative efforts to actually build up the people who are becoming citizens, and instead spend tons of money on prisons and on medical care and on back-end stuff. And it's backwards thinking, so that's why I'm here today.
Are you concerned about the growth of charters?
Yes, I am, mainly because it's pulling funding from public schools, and that puts people who can't get into charter schools, we don't have enough to manage everything anyways, so it's pulling funding from public schools in our area, and we're already drastically underfunded.
And the legislature has a 2/3 majority, Democrats. There are a lot of billionaires in California. It seems they're not really increasing the funding for public education.
It's very interesting too, because one of my peer teachers also mentioned that California has a long history of being very democratic state and being very pro-education, and yet how our funding for education is very, very low. It doesn't make rational sense. It's like we use that as a platform to get into office, and then we don't follow through on it.
You're unhappy with that?
I am unhappy with that.
My name is David Fisher. Yeah, I'm the second grade teacher and president of the Sacramento Teachers Association.
You were supposed to go on strike today. What happened?
Yeah, so we had a one-day strike on April 11th, and we had called the strike for today, May 22nd. Fortunately, there had been some progress, including some help from the state superintendent, Tony Thurman, and a promise to meet and really talk about real solutions. So out of a gesture of good faith, we decided to postpone the strike, and hopefully we'll get to get a resolution without having to call another one.
And you challenged the way the district is functioning. Why don't you talk about some of the issues, concerns you have?
Wow, well, recently, by the way, they've been saying they're about to go into insolvency. We've been pointing out that with some changes about cutting administration, the top level administrators, including, stop giving bonuses in the millions of dollars to the very highest paid administrators and rebudget towards the classroom, they could solve the budget crisis. And most egregiously, just recently, we pointed out to them that they weren't even counting all the students in their budget. So they found $16 million when they counted all the students, and magically, they're not on the doors of bankruptcy. However, they're still acting like it to try to leverage us to give concessions. And the concessions they want are us to give up on lower class sizes and more nurses that we'd already agreed to.
And Kevin Johnson, the former mayor, has charter schools. There's a lot of charter schools in Sacramento. Talk about how they're affecting you and the money that's going through.
Well, the oldest high school, a public high school in Sacramento, Sacramento High School, had about 2,000 regular public school students in it. When it was privatized and turned into an independent charter school, that dropped to about 700 kids. Now, I want to say nothing against our brothers and sisters who work in those schools. We know they have their challenges, but those aren't the answer. Regular public schools that are well-funded and well-staffed are the answer. So when that happened, that impacted all the surrounding schools that became overcrowded for a period of time, and we've never really recovered just from that one school being converted. So you consider if that happens at other schools, or like's happened in Oakland and some of the other districts that have had upwards of 30% of their schools turn into charter, it's just devastating spiral downward.
Ting Sung, Natoma Schools, and she's also on the California School Board. What do you think about these charter operators being on the California School Board or the Commission on Teacher Credentials?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know a lot necessarily about her, other than Natomas also has had serious problems with the board approving many independent charter schools, which people sometimes don't realize what that means. That means that dollars and resources that should be dedicated to educating regular public students get siphoned off and ends up hurting the students that are left behind. And one or two charter schools, sometimes you don't really see the difference, but you hit a critical mass, and all of a sudden some schools can't even fund themselves, and it's just tragic.
Now, what do you think about California? It seems like we have a lot of billionaires, growing number of billionaires here, but we're 41st in spending. The legislature has a 2/3 majority. they could pass a depletion oil tax, all kinds of things. Why no action?
Well, that's why we're here, or at least one of the big reasons why we're here. It's an irony that in a state that is, at least politically more progressive than most states, at least more democratic in the uppercase D, that we are so poorly funded. And they have a rainy day fund, but it's raining.
$21 billion?
Yes, $21 billion in a rainy day fund. And I'm telling you, at our schools, it's raining now.
What is it like in the schools?
Oh, well, look, we're lucky if our schools get a school nurse one day a week, maybe. A school psychologist might come in once or twice a month just to test students. We used to have schools that had nurses that were there full time, school psychologists there first time. We used to have class sizes that were 20 to 1. Now we're upwards of 35 to 1. And in the state, with all the resources we have, it's just not acceptable, and that's why we're here today.
The teachers do, a little bit loud and free. We want justice for our students. What?
The left of the left. Stand. My name is Bob Mandel. I'm an adult ed teacher in Richmond, member of the newly organized union there, and a former member of OEA, and was elected to the executive board for a long time. And what should have happened today is a statewide strike. And originally, that's what was supposed to happen today. And then the Democratic Party, through its CTA and CFT affiliates, went to work. UTLA called for a sick-out statewide today. OEA got right on board. UTLA subsequently went totally silent, did not even mention it in its newspaper. OEA backed off and only chartered buses for about 250 people out of a membership of 3,000. And today, the Sacramento Teachers were supposed to be on an unfair labor practice strike, and magically, that strike was called off at the last moment. And if you look at who CTA and the locals called in the LA strike first and the Oakland strike second, Tony Thurmond, Democratic Party State Superintendent of Education, who fundamentally went in as enforcer for the cuts. And Oakland ends up with continued closure of schools. Oakland got a settlement in pay that doesn't even keep up with inflation. And LA, which was powerful enough to begin to seriously defeat the charters, settled for a Democratic Party brokered resolution calling for the governor to do a study. And as you're aware, the governor's panel of 11, 7 of the 11 are strong charter supporters. So what we have here today is absolute controlled tokenism.
What kind of schools? Public schools. Whose schools? Our schools. What kind of schools? Public schools. Our schools.
My name is Mark Griffin. I'm school safety officer at Berkeley High School. Been there for 25 years, 25 plus. Here to try to make a difference. Need money for our children, with funding with after-school programs, special ed programs, and also school safety issue problems as well. We've been cut down to 3 safety officers that cut down 3 of our safety officers, and we are lacking the help that we should have, need to have over 17 and a half acres of land. So we just want to do whatever we can do to make sure that people see that we need the help.
Well, there are a lot of billionaires in California.
Wow.
It seems like there's so much wealth in California. Why don't we have it in the schools?
Well, I look at it this way, is that they don't want an even playing field. They want to hold all the money themselves, and I think that that's very unfair for some people. I was raised in Berkeley myself. I grew up on Bonar Street, and I realized that I had to try to fight for education. I couldn't go to Berkeley High because there wasn't enough for my academics, where El Cerrito gave me an opportunity. So I know for a fact that working in the Berkeley Unified School District for over 20 plus years, that our children need advocacy. We need more help and giving it to everyone, not just one set of people.
Are you concerned about privatization in charter schools?
I'm not concerned as much as it is a public school, because I watch every day. I watch people come into Berkeley that don't live in Berkeley. I feel like we're like animals at a zoo, because their parents coming in to look and see how Berkeley High is ran, and they're showing us off so that that these parents will bring their kids to Berkeley High School. And I think that, with the gentrification, pushing more African American and Latino parents out of Berkeley is very unfair. And I think because families who grew up in Berkeley now have to move to
being pushed out,
being virtually pushed out, and not given the opportunity to where it used to be a best education. You could get it at Berkeley. They kept saying that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Well, they're reinventing the wheel. The wheel was already in place when we graduating at least 700, 800 kids every year at one time. But now we don't know if they're not ready for society at this time.
This is a PR-CYA event, and I don't mean the Catholic Youth Association by CYA either.
And the legislature, there's a 2/3 majority of the Democrats.
It's a veto-proof legislature. It's veto-proof, and it continues to do the same thing. For example, Oakland was put under state receivership, the Oakland Unified School District, in 2003, and was forced down our throat was a $100 million loan, of which we still owe $60 million and won't be repaid till 2026. When the state took over, there was a $37 million deficit. They ran it up to $111 million. In other words, they ran it up by $74 million. Even without interest on that, they should be paying Oakland back $14 million. We shouldn't be paying them. This is an example, and this, by the way, with the Democrats in charge. It's a Democratic state. So are the Democrats the friends of education and the friends of labor? Judge for yourself, people out there. This happens year after year, year in and year out, and the union leadership continues to go hat in hand to the Democratic Party, hoping against hope that somehow things will be different this time, or at least that they'll be allowed to keep their seat at the table. And that seat at the table has gotten us where we are now. In Oakland, we are one of the lowest paid school districts in Alameda County, and if you adjust for the cost of living, we're one of the lowest paid in the United States. 70% of teachers in Oakland leave after 5 years. Unfortunately, the contract, which CTA played a big role in getting OEA to agree to, as did the Democratic Party, Tony Thurmond, who was supported by CTA and OEA for State Superintendent of Public Instruction, supports downsizing and cutting. He was instrumental. OEA asked him to come in and mediate the contract, and what did he do? He recommended a contract which gives less than half of inflation in pay increase. And that's just the beginning.
Mike Hutchinson with Oakland Public Education Network in Oakland, California.
And you came up here today. There's a rally of teachers. What are the issues that you're concerned about here at this rally in Sacramento?
Well, the main issue that we're really concerned about is control of charter schools and privatization. This rally, I think, is a really strong rally asking for the full funding of public education statewide.
How is that going to happen?
Well, first off, we think it's really important, as we're starting to have this conversation, that we make sure we make a clear distinction between public schools and charter schools and privatization. And as we're moving towards the full funding of public education, we want everyone to be careful that we don't then turn on that funding spigot to charter schools also. So
does that mean you're opposing Prop E E in Los Angeles, which is going to raise $500 million, but a couple $100 million is going to go to charter schools in Los Angeles.
Well, thankfully, I haven't had to look into E because I live in Oakland. But why I really came here today is we're actually really excited about Assembly Bill 1505, which would end the charter appeal process to the county and to the state. That's something that we've been working on in the community for years. And so we really believe if we bring more local control to these decisions, if we as a local community can decide who we're going to allow to educate our kids, that is a much more direct and easier way for us to control what's happening in our community.
Do you think public money should be going to privately run schools?
No. No. And, you know, we are really excited. Now, hopefully we can do away with charter schools eventually.
But for the repeal of the charter school law, 1992, that allows public money to go to privately run schools?
Yes. I don't want to be but in a dream world, yes, it would be great if we could just get rid of that.
We've got a lot of angry teachers here.
We've got a lot of angry teachers here. And for us really as a community in Oakland, what's even more important is that we have control over these decisions. And then we believe that, you know, we trust our community. And so if we have these decisions based in our community, we will be able to make the right decisions for our community. And what happened in Oakland, where we have the highest rate of charter schools in the state of California.
How many charters do you have in Oakland?
We're either at 44 or 45 now, about 30%. And most of those charter schools and the real proliferation of charter schools started when we were under state control from 2003 to 2009. So this was never anything that we wanted in Oakland. This wasn't, these ideas and schools didn't come from the community. They were imposed on us.
Wasn't Jerry Brown in favor of charter schools? He ran 2 in Oakland.
I don't know if I would say Jerry Brown was in favor of charter schools, but what I will say very strongly is Jerry Brown hated Oakland Public Schools and the Oakland Unified School District. So Jerry Brown, even while he was still mayor of Oakland, worked very actively to destroy our school district.
And there is a danger of financial crisis. They're laying off librarians. There's a danger under this new bill passed by Representative Skinner that they may take over the schools in Oakland and in Los Angeles and other districts. What do you think about that?
Well, we're not going to let them take over our schools again in Oakland, period. We won't let that happen. And the supposed budget crisis in Oakland is really, the books have been cooked and it's an engineered crisis. And so some facts that are really important for Oakland. For over the last 5 years, since 2013, state funding to OUSD, to Oakland Unified School District, is up 46%. Enrollment over that same period of time is about level. So at a time when we've greatly increased state funding, why is there all of a sudden a financial crisis in Oakland? The numbers don't add up.
You think it's being manufactured?
We know it's being manufactured.
To what end?
To put us on the brink of state receivership. Because in Oakland, what the real goal is for these forces is our property. They want our properties to sell properties to either developers or to charter schools. And what they've done for 3 years is they've put us on the brink of state takeover, and then they've tried to sell to the community the only way to fix our finances is to close schools and sell property. But for 3 years straight, the community has stopped every process that the school board has tried to roll out to close our schools. And so the last option they have left is putting us in a state takeover, which is what Assembly Bill 1840 would do.
Why would the Democratic senators pass a bill 1840 that would allow the sale of public land in Oakland and other districts?
Good question. To speak very honestly, many of the people here today at this rally were part of getting that bill passed. There were a group of people from Oakland who went up to Sacramento and told these legislators that we needed this bill to save our schools. We were sold out by a lot of people, but thankfully we found out about it just in time and we've stopped it. So in Oakland, when the teachers had their strike, we shut down 3 school board meetings in a 5-day period. The main reason we did that, and that was a community-led effort, was because that was the deadline for the school district to make decisions to qualify for this state Assembly Bill 1840. And we stopped them from doing that. We stopped them from making those votes.
Even one of the school board members attacked one of the picket lines?
Yes, the school board, by the 3rd meeting we shut down, the school board was so determined to get in the building, even though we had a picket line set up around the outside, that they tried to physically force their way in. And yes, there's a video of one school board member putting her hands around a teacher's neck. There's also a video of the one school board member who did make it inside was, and the only one who crossed the picket line technically, was Jody London, and there's a video of her limping in to the meeting 5 hours ahead of time with people heckling her the whole way. And so we're really excited right now about how things are finally starting to change. I actually don't think now that those same legislators who passed 1840 last year, I don't think they would do it now. One of the problems was there were too many people who were really selling us out as a community. But now the community has really been organizing around this. We've made it clear that you can't close our schools, you can't sell our property. We need to fully fund our public schools, and we're not going to really settle for anything less than that.
There's also an issue of privatization, the Howard Street Terminal, $4,000 million condos. What's your view on that as far as longshoremen and the effect on Oakland, West Oakland?
Well, what's kind of happened in Oakland in a larger sense, and again, it was since Jerry Brown was our mayor, a lot of this started in Oakland where Jerry Brown had what he called his 10K plan about 20 years ago. And what his plan was to bring 10,000 new people into Oakland as a way to save our city. That's really been the mentality and the policy direction for 20 years, that the only way to save Oakland is to bring outsiders in to save us.
Rich outsiders.
Rich outside, but not even rich, any outsiders. And so what we're really trying to do between our education policy, a lot of people in Oakland working on displacement issues and public land use issues, is to redirect the orientation to make it about taking care of the people who are already here and building a sustainable future for the people who are here, instead of pinning our hopes on attracting different people and forcing out the long-term residents.
I'm John Erminger. I'm a teacher at Pinole Middle School. I think one of the really surprising things about charter schools is the amount of money that the charter organizations are pouring into local elections, and our district is probably a really great example. So over the last 3 election cycles, 2012, actually last
Your district is?
My district's West Contra Costa Unified School District, basically Richmond, California, and surrounding towns. So over the last 4 election cycles, 2012 through 2018, charters and their supporters have spent about $1 million in our 30,000 student school district, which is, I can tell you, multiples of what was spent in past elections. So for example, in 2012, total expenditures were about $64,000. In 2014, total campaign expenditures were $460,000. In 2016, in our little mom and pop election, $708,000 was spent in the 2016 election.
Where's that money coming from?
And well, the money is coming from organizations such as Students for Educational Reform. It's coming from, a lot of it's coming from private individuals, from Steve Chamberlain, who has funded, he's a local billionaire who's funded literally hundreds of thousands of dollars.
He's building these schools?
Steve Chamberlain is also
building the charter schools, non-union?
Is actually building a non-union charter school, that's correct.
Which one?
That's the Summit, I do believe.
So he's building non-union
That's correct.
charter schools.
And then probably the largest single construction in our district is by John Scully, who is building seats for, it looks, between 4,000 and 6,000 students. He's spending literally tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on his own money on constructing this school. Now that's a separate issue than the campaign finance. So these are 2 separate issues, but these are 2 examples where charter, essentially billionaires, are hijacking our public education system, because they're coming in with these huge amounts of money that the public simply can't match. But to get back to elections, we really believe that our local elections have been distorted, because now we have 3 charter SPAC candidates on our school board, and one of them always votes the charter line. Well, because there's a lot of charter resistance in our district, we've got some waffling on the other 2 candidates. So that the message there is that whatever the candidate is, whatever their source is, they are amenable to political pressure.
And do you believe that any public money should be going to charter schools that are privately run?
No, if it's going to be privately managed, they should have private funds. So one of the big things about this is that in authentic public schools, the general public can access their budget documents, and so you can see whether or not the money is being spent as it should. It's really difficult to get the same documents from charter schools, because you generally have to fill out a public records request form and mail that off. And if you're going to do that,
that's online.
Not so. In other words, for authentic public school districts, the budget information is online, and they might hide it on their site, so you have to drill down a little bit. But they are legally obligated to provide public access for all of their budget documents. Now that's same true with charters, but they put in this extra barrier. They won't make it easy to provide it. You have to fill out a public records request, and if you expect to get a response, you better send it certified mail.
Why is there's a bond issue in Los Angeles, EE, $500 million that's going to provide more money not just for public schools but charter schools. What do you think about these bonds?
Well, we have the same issue here in West Contra Costa because we see two types of money going to the charters. So we see some of our parcel tax money that's for operating expenses such as librarians and counselors. We see the charters are getting a percentage of that is supposedly commensurate with the number of students that they have. Also, it's parcel tax money bond money as well is going to goes to the charters as well. So we're losing on two fronts to the charters.
And what do you think people should do? Teachers, I mean, there are 325,000 teachers in California in the CTA. Has there been the kind of mobilization of teachers and educators?
I would say that what teachers should do, they should really try and pressure their locals, and especially their local presidents, to pressure CTA to take a less collaborative approach with the charter schools. Because the truth is, CTA seems to be wanting to unionize the charters. But even if they do that, it's still going to adversely affect the majority of their members. So in that regard, it may...
By setting up a two-tier system?
Yeah, in that regard, it may be that CTA is actually violating its trustee relationship with the members, because CTA has an obligation to foster the interests of its current members. And when they support the unionization of charter schools, since the interests of charter school teachers and the interests of public school teachers are at variance, a contradiction, then I would really strongly urge local presidents to pressure CTA to change that.
You think the charter school law should be repealed?
Say that again, please.
The charter school law should be repealed?
The charter school law should be repealed. That's correct. We need public control of education. If these billionaires are sincere in their efforts to increase public education, then they should spend that money in public schools. And certainly if they did that, they would have a lot of influence, there's no doubt, but we would still maintain more public control than we're doing right now. And I would say it's not just an education matter, it's a broader issue than that, because it's public control of public resources. So, for example, as I said, it's very difficult to track that money. Also, we know a lot of charter schools, about a third of charter schools that have been chartered so far in California have gone broke or they failed. So it's a crapshoot. There's no doubt about it.